I think one of the things everyone's been talking about JP Morgan and the trends of 2021 is about, and Bill mentioned it as well, the rise of remote patient monitoring and what that is doing and how that is a major ecosystem transformer right now. And this is why we're holding this panel today. I think we are seeing the emergence of a new healthcare model, unlike potentially we have ever seen in at least 30 years. I don't know. I think it'd be great to hear the panel's views on this, but this could be as transformational as managed care was to healthcare when indemnity in 1990 was 80% of the healthcare reimbursement in our ecosystem. And by 2000, it was 5%. So we're looking at potentially a major shift. Again, the HIT lab scientists and researchers are studying this really carefully, but this group is the pioneer of this effort called Virtual First. And I want to welcome the panel. And again, as you all know, it's a pretty rapid succession HIT labs testing out for this format. We appreciate your patience with this and your willingness to test and learn with everyone else here. But with us today, we have Mond Johnson from the American Telemedicine Association, obviously the global leader in telemedicine, which is now front page news every day. And welcome, thank you for joining us. And we have Ron Dixon from Premedy, again, one of the leaders in virtual care, as well as Marcus Thygeson, as well from Bind. And an old colleague of mine, I should say not old, but one I've known for many years, Don Jones, from all the research work that HitLab has done with Qualcomm going back to 1999, and really one of the meccas, the ecosystems, if you will, center points of wireless healthcare, if not the kind of the pioneer and the birthplace of wireless healthcare, given how much the Jacobs family and Qualcomm put into the ecosystem starting in 1998 or so. Don, let's start with you. Can you define for us what is Virtual First? We're hearing this term. We'd love to know, how do you define this?
Well, Virtual First, and specifically Impact, which we just announced at JP Morgan as a new group to focus on the efforts of companies that are trying to bring virtual care to the masses. Was really driven by, in my definition, was driven by the fact that a focus on the consumer means deliver more than a telehealth opinion to the consumer, that you actually try and surround the consumer with a total solution. If that means getting them the diagnostics, the therapeutics, the drugs, it can go much beyond that. But most of the companies and efforts that we're seeing in Virtual First Care are trying to be much more comprehensive than perhaps historically what's happened in the world of telehealth, where essentially just became an alternative way to reach the physician and get the physician's opinion about the condition. And instead, in this case, we're delivering drugs, therapeutics, lab services, et cetera, all comprehensively. So that's actually what drove the concept to launch Impact. And we like to say it's where digital health gets put into practice. And I think that's the differentiating point. I'm very, very pleased we were able to team with the American Telemedicine Association and DIME, the Digital Medicine Society, to bring Impact to focus. And we're very happy that we have attracted health plans and digital first providers like Remedy to the table.
Well, fantastic. And again, Anne, as the president of the American Telemedicine Association, your phone must be ringing off the hook these days, given how telemedicine has really come in and saved the day for healthcare during the pandemic. Give us your perspective first on telemedicine and what you've heard from the JP Morgan meetings last week that's going to shape 2021. And then again, I'd love to get your perspective on virtual first healthcare as well.
Sure, and thank you for having me. I think it's safe to say that what we saw in the last 10 months was an incredible surge, and really technology delivering on what we all knew it could do all along, and having regulations catch up with that. So our focus within the ATA is really to ensure that the gains that we've made from a regulatory and legislative perspective become permanent. The concept of virtual first and what we've done in conjunction with DIME, I think, is really an expression of what you've heard from JP Morgan. These are two organizations that have very complementary strengths. DIME is a professional society. It's very focused on action-oriented research. And the ATA today represents over 400 organizations that are the gamut of what's happening in telehealth, going from delivery systems to payers, to the Teladoc Healths of the world, to Babylon Health, and a number of other organizations. So right now we are very focused on policy. So you see the combination of the professional orientation of DIME and the ATA. I think what we're seeing as well is with virtual first is this whole notion of meeting people where they are, which is something that Glenn Tolman talked a lot about when it came to Livongo. And from our perspective, in conjunction with DIME, we really represent a very broad and tight coalition. And I think more important than anything is to do this together, the two organizations together, because we're committed to no more silos. There has been enormous splintering and silo building within the healthcare industry to no one's advantage, and we're committed to making sure that doesn't happen. So I think the virtual first organizations have some unique challenges that collectively between research and policy, we're going to be able to address.
Yeah, and I think that's the cornerstone of what we're seeing here. And Ron, from your perspective and based on what you heard and read about from the JP Morgan meeting and just based upon what you're doing with Virtual First Healthcare Now and Impact, give us a little bit of your insights on what you're expecting for 2021.
Well, I mean, I think, the most important piece is that this is something that is long overdue. We've been at this forever. I feel like I've been, pushing this since, residency. For clinicians, just think about what makes sense for our patients. The fact that they have this access point in their hands all the time, that would give them the ability to monitor and manage their health, as one of the speakers was talking about with regards to sensors, and then seek care when necessary. And the fact that we've had a system that hasn't really enabled that and really has put barriers to try to innovate on the practice side, it's really due time that the investment community and the general system has this avenue to advocate for digital first. And what we do at Remedy, we believe in digital first, but we also believe that there might be the necessity to actually follow up with the provider in person and to integrate with the health system writ large. And we really believe in enabling primary care. So we are creating a digital front door. We have created a digital front door for patients to enter the system and be guided primarily with asynchronous communication technologies, and then escalate up the care ladder. Everything in healthcare is an escalation, and having digital capabilities allow you to escalate to that right point in the care paradigm. And if you need to go all the way up to in the hospital, you can have a digital interface that helps you with that. And what I loved about one of the last speakers talking about oncology, what we're doing with regards to oncology is looking at post-acute care and just thinking about how you can manage and monitor people asynchronously after, say, chemotherapy without actually having to come back to the office. That's, these are all things. Digital first is going to be the way forward. I think we do have some ways to go to get adoption, and I think this group of leaders will really allow us to get there and make some permanent changes. These are not, not just something that's going to go away with the pandemic. This is something that's going to last and have some permanence throughout the system.
Absolutely agreed there, and I think we're seeing it. And one of the things that we see when we look at the adoption of managed care into the healthcare system in the 1990s, and how that went from maybe 10 or 20% to nearly 95%, 100%. Marcus, you're an expert in that area for sure. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and why is virtual first of strategic value to managed care and health plans in general. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks for having me. So, Bind's innovating in the health insurance space, really creating a kind of health insurance that we call personalized healthcare, where people can find get the coverage they need, nothing more than they actually need, and then find the treatment paths that help them solve their healthcare problems. And we've been looking for provider partners that can help us. And we're very attracted to this virtual first space because we think that in addition to insurance and health insurance innovation, it's critical really to have provider innovation. And some of the most exciting stuff is happening in this virtual first space where providers are really pivoting to being very outcomes focused, both in terms of health outcomes, but also cost outcomes and experience outcomes, and really eliminating a lot of the inefficiencies and inconvenience of traditional kind of what I would call provider-centered care. I see the virtual first care as really being much more person-centered, patient-centered, and enabling people to find solutions for the healthcare challenges that are really much more associated with what they're looking for. So Vine's looking to foster the development of these providers because we see this as being the most rapid place of sort of healthcare innovation and delivery of better outcomes for our members. We want to make those available to our members as part of their treatment paths so that we can, promote the use of these services and help our members get better health outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's important to remember. There was a great article this morning, actually, we just tweeted it out at HitLab about Healthline and from Healthline about how this could be Impact First, or rather Virtual First and Impact could be the great equalizer, making healthcare more accessible to folks that for social determinants of healthcare, things like transportation and time off, single parents with 2 to 3 kids and homework assignments, things like that. This can really help people have access to healthcare they've never had before. And it only took a pandemic to get us here. Don, talk a little bit more about the some of the outcomes that Marcus alluded to, I think, and talked about and how the virtual first with pharmacy labs, nutrition services, other things, really get us to this new outcomes mantra.
Well, I think what's important to recognize is, I think at the end of the day, we're going to meet in the middle in healthcare delivery. Traditional service providers in healthcare have obviously added telehealth, but they're still very bricks and mortar centric in their thinking about delivery, et cetera. The virtual first providers are thinking first about how do we deliver to the patient, to the consumer in their place, and then the default when they reach the point, as Ron mentioned, where you do need maybe hands-on care, and you default to the bricks and mortar. So you're starting at opposite ends of the spectrum and then working towards the middle. And I would think that we can all probably agree that in 10 years, it'll all be the same thing. But there's a very different philosophy and mindset between a virtual first organization and a traditional healthcare organization that's using, both of which are using telehealth as one of the components. That being said, one of the key things is making sure that you deliver not just the telehealth, but all of the other things the consumer needs, whether that be mental health support, whether that be dietary support, whether that mean getting the prescription sent to their home, whether that mean getting laboratory tests done many times in their home, diagnostics in their home, other interventional therapeutics in their home, and really more thinking along the lines that you would expect Amazon to be thinking about. And in fact, Amazon is thinking about, because Amazon Care is essentially a virtual first operation for its own employees. So I think if folks want to dig into this a little deeper, there's a really nice article that Julie Yu put out at Edison on the new tech stack for virtual first care. You can go out to their site and download it. It's really, really nice. She's done some of the critical thinking in this space. And and then just today had a great example where Hims and Hers just went public in a blank check deal at a $1.6 billion valuation this morning. And what was interesting is in the article was talking about how they're partnering with the bricks and mortar side, with Ochsner and with a large primary care group, Privia, in order to provide that half of the equation, as Ron mentioned. So this is, there's 2 different approaches. Some customers want to continue to go in through the bricks and mortar front door. Many are going to start wanting to go through the digital door and avoid the bricks and mortar until they absolutely positively can't. And the interesting part is how these 2 kinds of approaches are going to end up meeting in the middle.
So let's talk a little bit about evolution. We've got a nice question from the gallery and from the audience about evolution of what this is going to do. And especially over 2021, this is going to be a critical junction point in terms of how this looks and how this adopts across the ecosystem. And how does virtual first help evolve telemedicine, not just in the United States, but around the world?
So a couple of things. One is just to build on Don's point about HIMSS. Both HIMSS and ROW are members of the ATA, and we've been big proponents of what they've been able to do from an asynchronous perspective. It's just astonishing in terms of taking really great lessons learned from marketing and making it work in healthcare. So it's that whole admonition of meeting customers where they are. I think the other is that virtual first, there's a journey that we're all on now, going from straight bricks and mortar to virtual. And this is going to take a lot of different turns and twists depending on the population, depending on the disease or condition that we're working through. And so I think it's going to be very much a learning collaborative in the process. And we're seeing this from overseas as well. The big issue that we also have to contend with, of course, is that, previously, one of the speakers touched on it, is the whole notion of connectivity. And once you have connectivity, you have to ensure you have devices. And devices could be more than just a smartphone. It could be audio only, because it is a modality that's legitimate in healthcare. And then finally, or following that, is the whole notion of digital literacy, making sure populations know how to use these devices. And then finally, resolving for bias, because until we start dealing with that, we're just gonna have a tech-enabled mess, and that's not what any of us want to have. So.
Great, and agreed 100%. And thank you. I think you're spot on there. And Ron, the ATA is, and certainly telemedicine is not the only evolutionary group, the only group that's going to evolve over the next year with this. And when you look at how providers and how health systems are going to evolve within this new, they're going to be heavily impacted. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. This is going to have a major impact on how provider systems are going to have to respond, and they're just trying to catch up right now with getting all their physicians used to telemedicine as a primary connectivity point for the physicians. I just had my first telemedicine visit for my annual physical with my physician this week, so it's phenomenal in so many ways. But how do providers evolve? You're in the midst of this as a CMO Remedy.
It's a beautiful question, because it does require collaboration. I don't want to sound contrite, but what we're doing at Remedy is we're working with specific provider systems to build that solution. So we have our own technology that we built that we believe can enable them to have that digital front door and have that guidance function, so that members, when they need to be escalated, they're escalated to the right place within their provider network. So that they're getting those financial outcomes that they need, and the patient's not having to start over again, which is one of the challenges with traditional telemedicine, is if your problem isn't solved, sometimes you have to start over. And our goal is to have patients not start over. But working with provider systems, I think, is the key piece. Understanding how we integrate with their workflows and their technology, and then how you can leverage. I think one of the real important points that was made was this. The capability of asynchronous interactions to generate data, and what you can do with that data that then allows you to become predictive. And when providers get a handle on that, and we've based some of our platforms off of, again, evidence-based work that was done previously in a prior life. And when providers get a hold of that, then they begin to adopt. And if you work alongside providers for adoption as opposed to try to compete, I think that's how you enable change in the system.
Absolutely, that's great. And we've got about a minute left, Marcus. Not to put you on the spot here, but sum it up for us. Virtual first. Major announcement last week at JPM, and we appreciate all of you joining us here today. What's your perspective on this? 2021, does it go from 1% of the healthcare system to 10%, or what and why?
Well, I think Bind's hoping that by the end of the year, we'll have 30% of our members using virtual first primary care for at least some of their care. So I think it actually has the opportunity to scale pretty rapidly. And I'm going to do my best to make that happen.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. greatly appreciate your time and this format. I know it's rapid. I know it's a little bit different than usual. Again, HitLab is always testing and learning, always trying to find new things, just like Virtual First. And looking forward to working with you all and seeing you all again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.